Good afternoon. This is the Government Operations and Health Facilities Subcommittee of the Health and Government Operations Committee. It is Wednesday, the 13th of March. We have 13 bills to consider today. We'll start with 1096, 723, 1149, 431, 1162, 1271, 999, 1026, 878, 598, 961, 1092, and 1174. We will start, as I said, with 1069. That's Lindsay and Delegate Kaufman.
Has introduced this bill would have established the Commission for the Deaf, Blind, and Hard of Hearing as an independent unit of state government. The sponsor submitted amendments. These were discussed during the bill hearing that strike the bill as introduced and instead creates a work group for the deaf, blind, and hard of hearing. I also circulated two additional amendments. One that was proposed by Delegate Kaiser. She noticed that the work group didn't provide for staffing or a chair. And then she also suggested adding 2 members to the work group. So the staffing would be with the Office of the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. The chair's amendment, so these were sent in separate documents because they weren't part of Delegate Kaufman's original sponsor amendment.
Lindsay, I'm sorry, we never actually received Delegate Kaiser's amendments. Are they able to be emailed, please?
Sure, I'm describing them. They're really just like a line that specifies that the Office of the Deaf and Hard of Hearing would staff the work group. It says that the members of the work group shall elect a chair from among the members of the work group. And then it also adds the Secretary of the Department of Disabilities or the Secretary's designee and the Director of the Office of the Deaf and Hard of Hearing or the Director's designee to the work group.
Oh, because I just told my bill was 10. So.
The chair's amendment sought to try to limit on the Office of the Deaf and Hard of Hearing by specifying that the work group shall establish subcommittees as necessary to fulfill its duties and assign members as necessary to assist in the research and preparation of the report that the work group is required to submit under the bill. The last thing I wanted to raise for everyone's consideration is I noticed the updated work group is required to submit a report on or before June 1st, 2025. And then the bill terminates June 30th, 2025. So generally speaking, when you all are creating work groups, task forces, things like that, you usually leave an extra session to extend or adjust things as necessary after receiving that report. Or if for some reason they can't complete the report by the deadline. So you might want to consider allowing for an extra session to make changes rather than having to come back and reconstitute a work group. But that's all up to you.
Yeah, this is Delegate Kaufman speaking, Ms. Rowe, and I'd be fine with that.
Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't realize we were on that bill already. I apologize. I was having trouble logging in.
Okay. Yes, we're going to start with that one because we have an interpreter for this bill. Okay. Does anyone have any questions, comments on House Bill?
Hi, I screwed up. How are you? Good. Hold on.
Okay.
Aaron,
I'm trying to mute.
Okay.
move the amendments.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to move the
I
amendment.
see someone with their hand up.
With an electronic hand or
Her physical hand. It's Michelle
Okay.
Westfall.
She was one of our advocates.
She'll need to be spotlighted for the interpreter, please.
Delegate Carr, I think your aide controls the ability to spotlight somebody.
Okay. And if you're listening, can you spotlight Ms. Westfall, please? Ms. Foxman, are you able to interpret what?
Give me just a moment. I'll pin her. Okay. All right, great. Hello, everyone. My name is Michelle, and I just want to check about the amendment. If I understand you correctly, you're saying that the Maryland Department of Disabilities will be involved. Did I catch that correctly? We are not really interested in their involvement, so I don't know why. If that is a specification in the amendment, I would very much appreciate it if that be removed, please.
I will defer to Delegate Kaiser. That was part of her proposed amendment.
Thank you. The point that we were considering, given the fiscal note and given the hearing, and I'm addressing two parts in one, so give me some room here. By including both the Department of Disabilities.
I'm sorry, excuse me. I'm sorry to interrupt. Can you please spotlight Leslie again as the interpreter so that she can be easily accessed? Thank you. Almost.
Maybe they can pin them both so that we don't lose the interpreter at any point.
Can I start again? Are we good?
So I'm not spotlighted, and I don't know if anybody has. Oh, now we are.
Okay, so to answer the question about why are we including the Department of Disabilities, and I would also say, why are we including the Director of the Office of Deaf and Hard of Hearing? And I'll answer the second part first and then get back to the original question at hand. There was a sense from the hearing and from the fiscal note that there was overlap with the Office of the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, so it seemed relevant to include them. I also believe that Department of Disabilities has some overlapping areas as well. They would just be one member of a group of, I don't remember, and Lindsay can clarify whether it's 10 or 12 people. But what we're trying to do is multiple things here and provide better services, but we're also always trying to not duplicate services. And so I wanted to ensure that someone was there from that department to ensure that there wasn't any of that duplication. They would not be in charge. They would have a small voice in this commission.
Go ahead, Michelle. Michelle Westfall.
Michelle's talking. Wait, let her talk.
Mr. Foxman, you're muted.
I can't see Michelle unless she's pinned, and I keep having to change that. So give me just a moment, please.
Okay.
And it's not allowing me to
And
pin.
I'm the second backup interpreter, and I cannot pin Miss Westfall either.
Can she be
Not
spotlighted?
allowing me either to pin her.
You gotta do Westfall now and switch back and forth between the two.
Again, multiple people could be pinned.
We are not able to pin for whatever.
I don't think
reason.
we're gonna
I'm
figure
try
that
to
out.
get her.
And the time.
Now I can. Okay. We're good to go.
Okay,
This is Michelle again.
yes.
Thank you. I appreciate your patience. I do want to respond to that. And we do understand that the point is to avoid duplication. But Maryland Department of Disabilities are not experts on deaf people or deaf issues, deaf concerns in our community. The governor's office is. So we do feel that that would be sufficient representation to avoid duplication. If that makes sense.
Go ahead, Kaiser.
That makes sense.
Okay, are you willing to amend your amendment?
So on my amendment that has four major components, it's to eliminate Roman 3 of the inclusion of the Secretary of Department of Disabilities or the Secretary's designee.
And Lindsay, can you make that change?
Yeah, so just to recap where we are is we've got the sponsors amendment, creating the work group. We have Delegate Kaiser's amendment, which now just adds the Director of the Office of Deaf and Hard of Hearing or the Director's designee to the work group. To clarify, it started with 12 members. This would be a 13th member of the work group. Still on Delegate Kaiser's amendment, the members shall elect a chair from among their members, and the Office of the Deaf and Hard of Hearing shall provide staff for the work group. And then the chair's amendment to establish subcommittees and assign members as necessary to assist in research and preparation of the report. Finally, my suggested amendment to just still have the report due June 1st, 2025, but extend the termination date until after the 2026 session in case there is some need to come back and do something.
Delegate Olson, you originally moved these amendments. Do you wish to move them again?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the amendments. All in favor of the amendments, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed to the amendments? Is there a motion on the bill as amended?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the bill as amended. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition to this bill? Thank you very much. We will,
Thank you very much, Chair Kerr. I appreciate it.
you're welcome, Delegate Kaufman. We'll now move on to House Bill 723.
So this bill is back from the last two subcommittee meetings, I believe. There was an issue remaining in the bill as to whether the Office of the Attorney General could have authority to fine nursing homes and assisted living facilities for violations of the rights that were delineated in the bill. The bill is introduced still, the bill still authorizes the Office of the Attorney General to have injunctive relief when it comes to ongoing violations. So the amendments that were presented today, if the Office of the Attorney General is here, they can speak to them or Delegate Alston, but it would strip the penalty authority from the bill.
Thank you, Aaron. Delegate Alston, this was a question that you had. Are you satisfied with the answers you received since our last meeting?
Yes, and I would move the new amendment to strip the penalties from the bill.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All in favor of accepting the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition to this amendment? The amendment is adopted. On the bill,
the amendments.
Move the bill.
move the bill as amended. And a second, all in favor of the amended bill, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on now to 1149.
I think Delegate Kerr, I had texted you. I don't know if you saw it. There's a feeling that this bill should be held today since Senate Finance is voting it, and just to wait and see what happens there.
Okay, I did get a text from you. I didn't make a note on my sheet. Thanks. We'll hold this bill then. I see Delegate Boafo is on the call, and I did receive another text from Delegate Alston. So if we could, Lindsay, can we move on to HB 598, and I will recognize Delegate Alston.
You want me to go? Wait for Lindsay.
Oh, I think we won't need to hear from Lindsay today after we hear from you, Delegate Alston.
Okay, thank you. So yes, Delegate Boafo did send me the amendments. Unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to look at them or to speak with the caucuses that I contacted. I promise I will do that today so that if we can hold this until the morning.
Hey, Delegate Boafo, if you didn't know it, you now have something to do at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Do you want me to provide any feedback on what the new bill does?
If you could coordinate with, I think just coordinate with Delegate Alston and we'll be good for tomorrow.
Will do. Thank you.
All right. Now, Delegate Boafo, would you rather be early or late tomorrow at our 8 o'clock session?
We have a Prince George's education meeting at 8:30, so.
Okay, I'll get you out of the way quickly.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for being patient with us. Delegate Pruski's bill 431.
So this bill was heard quite a while back. The bill renames the Maryland Department of Veterans Affairs to be the Department of Veterans and Military Families, and the Secretary of Veterans Affairs to be the Secretary of Veterans and Military Families. The Secretary must appoint a Deputy Secretary of Military Family Policy and Programs. The Deputy Secretary serves at the pleasure of the Secretary, is entitled to salary provided in the state budget, and must direct policy and programs related to military families. There are no amendments on the bill. It passed the Senate. This cross-file passed the Senate 46-0. The reason we've been waiting on it is to have a high fiscal note, but the governor's included the cost for the new deputy secretary in the supplemental budget.
Okay, okay, we have, there are amendments. Delegate Hill, do you move the amendments?
No, there's no
amendments. I move the bill.
Oh, I see. It says no amendments. Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the bill. All in favor of the bill, say aye.
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 Any opposition to the bill? No opposition, the vote's unanimous. We will, we'll move on to 1102, Delegate Rogers and Lindsay.
This is HB 1162. The bill establishes the 911 Specialist Recruitment and Retention Work Group to identify and examine recruitment and retention challenges that affect 911 specialists in the state and make related recommendations. The work group must submit an interim report of its findings and recommendations by December 1st, 2024, and a final report by December 1st, 2025.
And there are no amendments, right?
No amendments.
Okay. Delegate Hill.
Yeah, I'd like to offer, I think they may not have to, but I guess it's really a question for Lindsay. I do think they should start with the report that was issued from the Next Generation 911, because we had a number of recommendations that came out of that. And I think we should start that. I'm looking for a conceptual amendment that would tell them, as to include in their, how would you put it? To include in their work group that they would that report, or include. I don't know how to say it. I think
I think I understand where you're going. Something like that the work group in completing its work under what's now subsection F shall use the report from the Commission to Advance Next Generation 911 in Maryland as a starting point for their discussions.
Yes, the final report, because I think the Next Gen had 3 reports, so the final report from that as a starting point for their right. Or sure. Right, that sounds good. If I can get a second on that. Mr. Chair, that's an amendment that I'm moving.
Okay, Delegate Hill, as you move, I'm sorry, I had difficulty hearing you. Did you say you moved the amendment?
I'm moving a conceptual amendment that Lindsay just described to make sure that the work that was done just 3 years ago doesn't get thrown out.
So it would be something to the effect of that this work group should use the reports, multiple reports that were submitted by the Commission to Advance Next Generation 911 in Maryland as a starting point for their work.
Okay, I understand now. We have a motion on the conceptual amendment. Lindsay just explained, and we have a second. All in favor of this amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposition to this amendment? All right, the amendment's been adopted.
Okay, move the bill as amended.
Okay.
Second.
I have a motion and a second on the bill as amended. All in favor of the bill, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposition to this bill? Okay, Delegate Rogers, thanks for joining us. Looks like we didn't need your help on this one. Your bill is moving on to the full committee. How about, this one, 1271, the AI bill for Delegate Jazz Lewis.
Sorry, my folders are in numerical order.
Yeah.
This bill expands the responsibilities of the Secretary of Information Technology and the Department of Information Technology as they relate to artificial intelligence. requires units of state government to conduct data inventories, AI inventories, and impact assessments
That's what you get when you start.
of data systems that use AI.
You're gonna find out.
Authorizes and establishes a process for proof of concept procurements. Exempts competitive proof of concept procurements valued at less than $1 million from BPW approval. However, DGS must submit a report to BPW by December 1st each year with specified information about those procurements. Codifies the AI subcabinet of the Governor's Executive Council and requires the subcabinet to submit 2 reports. I circulated a reprint of amendments from the sponsor that strike language that would have required the Secretary of Information Technology to conduct ongoing assessments of systems that deploy AI. Requires units to conduct an inventory of systems by December 1st, 2025, rather than December 1st, 2024, and specifies that the inventory shall be conducted regularly rather than annually. Requires the inventory to be of systems that employ rights impacting or safety impacting AI rather than of all AI systems. Alters terminology in the bill to reflect the deployment of systems. Requires the department to make an aggregated statewide inventory available on its website rather than each unit's inventory, and prohibits making information related to safety and security of state systems publicly available. Extends the timeline for units to conduct impact assessments. Requires impact assessments of systems that involve rights impacting or safety impacting actions rather than high-risk actions. Alters language regarding the policies and procedures adopted by the department concerning the development, procurement, deployment, use, and ongoing assessment of systems that employ rights impacting or safety impacting AI by units of state government. Alters the date after which a unit may not procure or deploy a new system that employs AI unless the system complies with the policies and procedures from July 1st, 2025 to January 1st, 2025. Requires units that employ rights impacting or safety impacting AI to conduct regular impact assessments as determined by the AI subcabinet. Alters the duties of the AI subcabinet. Authorizes the governor to include in the annual budget an appropriation that is the lesser of $2 million or an amount sufficient for DO-IT to carry out the requirements of the bill. Strikes language that would have exempted certain information technology projects by DO-IT from BPW approval, and alters the required report from the AI subcabinet to be a reported roadmap of study activities.
Move the amendments.
We have a motion on the amendment. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We have an amendment. We have some people that wish to speak before we vote on the amendment. I see Mike Cather, you were first up.
Thank you. I wanted to get back to you all because at the hearing that we had, it was a request that we received a request of how other states had actually viewed this in relation to higher education. And we have requested an exemption from this that is being discussed in the Senate as well. What we found is there are 56 AI laws that have been enacted across the country. Of those 56, only 7 are comparable to this law and actually apply to the public sector. Of those 7, only four of them are on very specific topics like employment and policing and all of that. So that only leaves really 3 bills across the country that would apply to public higher education. And of those, California explicitly exempted the University of California system. Connecticut is unclear, but they didn't include any of the information from their system in their end-of-year report. And Delaware is including their public higher ed institutions, but exempted all kinds of categories around education, research, health, and finance from their AI bill. So we just wanted to put forth that information that was requested, and again, request the exemption for the University System of Maryland and public higher ed from this new subtitle 8.
Okay, thank you. Lindsay, did we get that request to be for the exemption?
I mean, they testified on that at the bill hearing. So yes.
Oh, on the bill hearing.
And it's
Okay.
being discussed right now in the Senate side as well. So the exemption.
Okay. Daniel Wolf.
Thank you. I'm Dan Wolf. I'm the Director of State Programs with the Alliance for Digital Innovation. I apologize. My lighting is weird in this office, so I may not be showing up on video. We testified on this bill in both the House committee as well as in the Senate committee, and are working through these amendments that are now being considered by the subcommittee. We do have some concerns. We're supportive of the proof of concept procurement and the other aspects of the bill. We have concerns around the high risk language, as well as the definitions of health-based, of rights impacting artificial intelligence and safety impacting artificial intelligence that are now included. We're concerned that essentially the framework that this bill is setting up now is not aligned with a risk-based approach that you see from NIST, and NIST also leverages the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, in their publications. And the bill is now using definitions that, quite frankly, aren't found in law anywhere else. The rights impacting artificial intelligence and the safety impacting artificial intelligence definitions, from what I've seen, come from a draft memorandum issued by the U.S. Office of Management and Budget that was, and I emphasize draft memorandum, that was posted for public comment, which industry as well as the general public and higher education has been commenting on that memo, and we have not yet seen an update from OMB on that. So we don't even know that OMB itself will be adopting these definitions. I'll say that these definitions, the way that they've been leveraged in the bill, create an extraordinary degree of uncertainty around what exactly is a legal right under this bill anymore. And we have a proposal that would, we believe, fix a great deal of that uncertainty, which is simply striking those definitions of rights impacting artificial intelligence and safety impacting artificial intelligence that you find on pages 8 and I believe it's just on page 8 of the bill, and restoring the definition of high risk, at least, subsections 1 and 2 of the definition of high risk, leaving subsection 3 of that definition struck, and then restoring the references to high risk throughout the bill that are struck in this amendment, which will then create more of a risk impact framework that will then permeate the bill. What the bill will do, as these amendments are currently drafted, would require Maryland DoIT to reach out to any affected community when there is, quote unquote, safety impacting artificial intelligence or rights impacting artificial intelligence. Any of those rights have been violated. And I would submit that, as a former deputy CIO of the Commonwealth of Virginia, that's not the place of Maryland to do it. That's not going to be their expertise. That's not going to be their skill set. But B, there is just an extraordinary degree of uncertainty in what even any of those rights might mean, for it to be implemented in the first place. So again, striking subsections D and E all of D on page 8, restoring D1 and 2 that were redlined through on this amendment for high risk. And we believe that will get us as far along on restoring, on turning this into a viable framework as possible. And I'm happy to answer any questions, because I know that was probably a little bit confusing. And struggling.
I guess my question to you is, what have your discussions with the House and Senate bill sponsor on these issues yielded?
This has been a moving target on what these amendments were. I didn't even get the amendments until yesterday. Okay. So haven't had an opportunity to even have this until last night. I was going to reach out on these definitions, but last night we received notice of this.
All right, but yeah, you're going to need to do that. And if you can get that done today, we can take this bill up again tomorrow morning. But let's hear from John Fiastra.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. John Fiasco here on behalf of both the Cybersecurity Association of Maryland and AWS, Amazon Web Services, who provides the cloud services for a lot of AI applications. And I want to echo some of the comments that Mr. Wolf made. And I just to highlight, I think what has happened here is we had a framework, but when we bring in the new definitions of rights impacting or safety impacting and put them into what the responsibilities are of the department, we get kind of an awkward and practically, in some ways, unwieldy result. And let me just give you an example. As we look down on the bottom of page 8, safety impacting includes climate or environment, including irreversible or significant environmental damage. So if it is determined that an AI application yields an adverse climate impact, not just the individuals impacted, but perhaps entire communities impacted need to be notified. That requirement sits on bill page 10, and you'll see it in line 7. The department would be required to notify an individual or group of individuals determined to have been negatively impacted by a system that employs rights impacting or safety impacting artificial intelligence. I'm not quite sure exactly how the department would go about doing that, whether that's by email, snail mail. I'm not exactly sure what exactly or how exactly would be determined that an AI application be viewed as having an impact on climate change. I think there's a lot of questions here. So I would suggest that if this committee intends to bring up this matter, I would concur with Mr. Wolf's assessment here and recommendation to kind of dial it back to the original high-risk definition and take paragraphs 1 and 2 of high risk and continue to exclude paragraph 3 of the high-risk definition. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sure that Mr. Wolf or I are available for questions related to these suggestions.
Okay, thank you. Delegate Hill?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate the both the Alliance and Ms. Fausto coming through. We went through the sponsor, Delegate Lewis and Dewitt, sat down and went through all the wording and came up with these amendments. And I understand that the testimony from Mr. Wolf is that they didn't see these amendments until last night and so had no idea of what was going on. But I would, I know you're discussing holding it, but I would like to move the amendments that Dewitt and the governor's office and the committee staff and the chair have already offered. And if there's some additional discussion that could be held before we get to full committee, but I'd like to move these amendments that that have been offered today.
I think we moved them.
Right, I'd like to go ahead and get those voted so we can move this bill along, but that's your discretion whether we're going to hold the bill for this additional discussion that had
So
into it.
Delegate Hill, are you suggesting that we move this bill out of subcommittee today and then take up these issues with the full committee?
Right, I think in the full committee it will become a question of when they speak to do it, the governor's office, the sponsor, if they want it, it'll be easy enough to make the changes they're suggesting it. But I mean, you could ask Lindsay what she thinks about it, but I don't think there's a reason to hold this bill.
I think my concern would be that we wouldn't have the benefit of having the advocates in the full committee discussions. And
Well, what I'm suggesting is that if the changes that are being recommended are consistent with what the group, the governor's office, do it, and the sponsor and staff want, then it would just be a presentation from Lindsay that these are what were agreed to. We've done this amendment. There's another amendment on the amendment. I don't think it would be a debate. They either, the sponsor would either agree to what they're suggesting. And maybe Lindsay can chime in on whether she feels that would be workable or that she feels we need to hold this.
okay, yeah, let's hear from Lindsay.
So I guess the things that I would note are, I agree with Delegate Carr that we wouldn't be able to have advocates at the full voting session to be able to weigh in. We can convey messages that we've received from them. The other issue, if you will, or timing question is, generally the bills that we are discussing now would be voted in full committee later today. This subcommittee is going to meet again tomorrow at 8 a.m. and we'll probably vote again tomorrow, maybe Friday. So if this bill is voted today but not put before the full committee voting session, the next full committee voting session would be after our next subcommittee meeting anyway.
So
Yeah, Delegate Hill,
fair enough. I'll withdraw
yeah.
that suggestion. Thank you.
I appreciate your desire to get this moving, but I think this just is still a little bit too unclear. So, Mark and Dan and John, if you can do your best to meet with both sponsors and maybe report back to me about progress tonight, and we'll see if we can get it back on the agenda tomorrow. I'm sure we're going to have another subcommittee meeting Friday or Saturday. So, but I think we need to get these things figured out a little bit better. Delegate Alston?
Thank you for encouraging them to meet with the sponsor. I would also ask if you all could please give us copies of your amendments or your concepts in writing so we can review it, because this is a very dense bill. And I want to make sure that I understand exactly what it is that you all are asking. And it was like a whole mouthful to digest in this setting. So if you could get it to us in writing as well, that would really be helpful.
But let me just add that we really want this bill to move.
Absolutely.
And so time is of the essence. And at some point, we're going to have to make some decisions because we have the crossover deadline looming over all of our heads. Delegate Hill?
Yeah, final question. I wanted to be clear from the two gentlemen. Do you have the same amendments? So Alliance and Fiastra, are you all asking for the same things, or you're not even aligned on what you're asking for?
No, Delegate, I think you interpreted it correctly, and Dan, correct me if I'm wrong. I think we're kind of lockstep here. I think we're kind of flagging the same issues and representing different clients, but have come to the same consensus on this.
And you have the same language, you have the language that you're suggesting available to give to Delegate Lewis.
We will this afternoon, ma'am.
We will this afternoon, yeah.
Yeah, if you could coordinate your message and all, send a unified discussion to the sponsors. Okay, last word, Patrick Mulford.
I was just asking if you wouldn't, Mr. Wolf and John, would you mind sharing those with myself as well? Dan, I'll send you an email where you can share those, but would love to see those beforehand as well.
No problem.
Thank you.
All right.
Just a very quick point of clarification. Should we be sending the amendment language to the committee, to the sponsor? Who would you like it sent to?
I'd like you to run it past the sponsor,
okay,
but then get it to our counsel, Lindsay Rowe, once you have these agreements down.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks everyone for taking on this work here and understanding our deadline. Let's move on to Delegate Hill's Bill 999.
This bill establishes the work group on establishing a science and technology best practices and innovation network staffed by the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. The work group must study and make recommendations on topics related to the establishment of a network of experts in science, technology, and industry. By December 1st, 2024, the work group must report its findings and recommendations to the Governor and General Assembly. The amendments that I circulated from the bill sponsor alter the membership of the work group to remove most of the government representatives and alter the duties of the work group to focus on non-institutional collaboration.
Delegate Hill.
Yeah, that's essentially it. And I think there was some confusion. There are two bills that I have before the subcommittee. One, I think the next one we'll discuss of my bills is a companion piece to Delegate Lewis's bill that completely pulls our AI agenda into alignment with what the governor's initiative is and creates the commission for that. This bill is different. This bill is to look at a hub or the creation of a hub where regular citizens who aren't aligned with universities and aren't aligned with proprietary information holding corporations can share the work that they're doing in science and technology and basically create innovation hub. And so this will be a work group to look at the feasibility of that, what it would cost, where it should be housed. And it's just another way of moving innovation forward in the lab. It's like a innovation, technology, and science town square for the citizens of Maryland.
Do you want to move your amendment?
I'd like to move the amendment.
Okay. We have a second on the amendment?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the amendment. All in favor of the amendment, say aye. Okay, I see some hands. Any opposition to this amendment? Okay, the amendment's been adopted. Would you like to move your bill as
Move the bill,
amended?
please, as amended.
Okay.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the bill as amended. All in favor of the amended bill, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposition to the amended bill? All right, the bill moves on to full committee. Delegate Chalega?
What's the fiscal note on it? And I assume UMBC agreed to do this.
And it's 0 because UMBC is going to handle it.
Okay, you still good with your vote, Delegate Chalega?
Yep.
Okay, good. I don't see Delegate Patterson with us, but I do see Delegate Bartlett. So let's move on to 878, please.
As introduced, this bill establishes a process by which a constitutional officer or immediate family member may request the removal of personal information that has been posted publicly on the internet or made publicly available through any other means. On receipt of such notice, the person who made the disclosure must remove the personal information as specified, and a constitutional officer or immediate family member who's injured by a violation of these provisions may bring an action for damages against the person who committed the violation. The sponsor submitted amendments that expand application of the bill to members of the Senate and House of Delegates, clarifies that personal information does not include certain information, and establishes requirements for the request to remove a posting of personal information.
Thank you. Delegate Bartlett, anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I thought Lindsay did a great job, and I just wanted to make sure we underline the fact that that all of MGA is included.
Okay, thank you for that. Do I have a motion on the amendments for Delegate Bartlett's bill?
So moved.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposition? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for the bill as amended.
I have question.
Second.
We'll get to you. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Delegate Alston.
I was just wondering, I know there was a provision for liability. I wanted to know what happened with that provision.
Lindsay or
I'm trying to
Delegate
find
Bartlett?
it, but
It's still there. It's on the, at the very end. It's like the last sentence, last full sentence. That you may bring, action for damages against the person who committed the violation.
Is that what you're referring to, Delegate Alston?
it is.
Yep, that is still there.
Are you satisfied with that, Delegate Austin?
Well, I'm just trying to understand, like, what damages would a person be entitled to sue for under this? And what are people going to be exposed to? And I guess my further question is, how does this jive with the First Amendment rights of people to say what it is that they want to say? So like, I put something up, I don't want to take it down. I'm saying that I have a First Amendment right to do so. And then I'm sued for some kind of damages for having something on the internet. I'm just trying to understand the damage provision because I think that's kind of the crux of it.
I mean, a person would have to demonstrate in court what their damages are. So it's difficult for me to say. I mean, if it was some sort of, you'd have to prove that that you suffered some sort of damages, what the cost of those damages were, and that this person was responsible for those damages being incurred to you. So I struggle right now to come up with an example of what those damages might be. But if you had damages of some kind, you'd have to prove them in court and prove what the actual cost of them were. It's not just like an amorphous sum, it's actual damages.
Delegate Bartlett?
I'm sorry, it takes a bit. Also, we did get an informal opinion from the Office of the Attorney General regarding the First Amendment. So the parameters would be, the protection would be available in this sense that, and I was in the process of pulling up their informal decision. Here we are. So in the sense that here we are. Let me tell you what I've got. So it's not unconstitutional against the First Amendment because it has been found that as long as it's using the least restrictive means to achieve a compelling government objective. And in this case, the compelling government objective is the safety of the members of the members who are mentioned, as well as their family members. And so what we're trying to do is to keep it narrowly tailored to penalize no more speech than necessary to accomplish this objective. So it would be actually, if a case is filed, it's almost a shifting of the burden. So the plaintiff, meaning one of the officers of the General Assembly or one of the members of the General Assembly, would first have to claim, that there are damages. Then the defendant would have to have the burden of stating that, in fact, what I didn't do was to, it didn't affect your your safety or your family member's safety. And then they would have their defense. And if they wanted to, they could state that what they said was not something that, damaged the public, the personal safety of those individuals who brought the claim. So what else do I have here? Yeah, so the reason for the bill is an increase in threats, and that we are trying to attack that compelling state interest.
Would you mind sharing the informal opinion that you received?
Sure. Also wanted to state that it does not criminalize speech because what it does is provide a private right of action.
And for me, that's the part that's kind of concerning, because with that private right of action, if someone puts out an address and then someone goes and they're protesting, right? And in the course of that protest, someone is pushed or shoved. Does the person who listed the address now have liability for a person getting pushed during the course of a protest?
Well, it would be up to the plaintiff to be able to prove that, because they'd have to prove the direct cause. They'd have to prove the cause that, if it hadn't been for these people putting my address out there, they'd have to prove it just like any other civil case for damages. It's not a straight line, and it is fact by fact, case by case basis.
Yeah, if you could send that, I would appreciate it.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Shalega?
As I am not a lawyer, I just want to make sure I understand this bill. It says that someone cannot put personal information, which means home address and or phone number, out to the public of the people listed in this: constitutional officers, Senate, House, the other folks, the governor, lieutenant governor, yada, yada, cannot post that or share that or put that up. And if they do, then it can be asked for them to remove it, and they have to remove it within 72 hours. It's not about like me having a speech that someone is attacking me for. Isn't it just about Sandy or Delegate Bartlett? Is that what we're talking about here?
Yes, that's exactly what we're talking about. If I may, Mr. Chairman, that's exactly what we're talking about. It's not just having the information out there. It is the request to have it removed. And there has to be, you remove it, you ask someone to remove it, they don't remove it, someone is harmed. There's a full, there's several check boxes that have to happen to even be able to bring a case. But putting that information out there to begin with, your First Amendment rights are protected. It's when you're asked to remove it and someone gets harmed that the case could be brought against that individual.
It doesn't say someone can't put our personal information out there. It says if someone does and we ask them to remove it, they have 72 hours to remove it.
That's correct.
Thank you.
And the ask has to be in writing. Thank you.
We are 3 minutes away from full committee. So Delegate Kaiser. You're still muted. Delegate Johnson.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. And just, I thought they announced on the floor it was 1:45 for full committee.
12:45?
1:45, yes.
2:45.
I'm sorry,
2:45.
2:45. Oh, I had 2:30 written down.
Yeah, spring
Right.
forward, everybody,
And-
spring forward.
And now my question, Mr. Chair, was I wanted to make sure I wasn't getting confused and we're not muddying the water here. When we're talking about protests, if that's outside someone's home, then the homeowner would have to come out
Oops.
off the property. And if someone would get pushed, that would be, I think, a different circumstance. So I didn't want to get too muddy here when we're talking about when we brought protest into the conversation.
Let me, Miles is here from the governor's office. Do you want to weigh in at this point?
Yeah, I think what Vice Chair Bartlett has said has encapsulated a lot of these questions very well. If you do cause harm to somebody, if there's a violent act, there's a way in court to go after to bring forth criminal charges against them. This is civil action against someone who's posting that information. I'd consider those to be two separate events.
Delegate Kaiser?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and sorry if I missed my opportunity before with a personal call. My question for Delegate Bartlett, my understanding was that there's a parallel bill for the judiciary that's going through your committee and JPR, and my understanding as well is that it failed in your committee last year. Is that bill moving?
Is moving, and it did move. We voted it out.
Okay, thank you. That's all I needed. Thank you.
Delegate Hill?
Yes, real quick, Delegate Barton, I like the bill, I like the amendments. I just, in terms of how it's going to be practically used, the idea of somebody's being doxxed and they're going to be able to find an address for this request to go by mail. Can you just address in practicality how?
Well, first of all, I'm going to use one of us. Okay, so I would have to know that my address is out there. I'd have to also know who posted it. And I'd make my best attempt to go to that person and say, my address is out here. I'd prefer you to take it down. Not just I prefer, please take it down. It also states that I have to do that in writing. I have to send it by certified mail.
And let me interrupt for a second, if I may, because of time. That's actually what I'm asking about, because a lot of this doxing is done online, and I may know the person who posted it, right? And I can communicate with them online. That doesn't mean I'm going to have access to send them by certified mail.
But the next step is email. I'm sorry, the other part is email. You can send it by email as well.
Okay, or direct messaging. I mean, again, what I'm saying is the way things done on social media, right? Do we need to specify direct? I mean, I know what you're trying to do here, that you have to actually get to that person, but a lot of the doxing is being done, as you know, on social media. That doesn't mean we have the email address of the person who's doing. We may have their ID, we may have their YouTube, we may have their Facebook.
Right.
To get in touch with them, but I'm concerned that it must be certified mail or email in order to tell them, I need you to take this down. Would you be opposed to, and I'm not sure how it will be worded, that said, or a direct message to them via the same, essentially the same online media site that they're using to something like that to publish it. I'm just concerned that we can't always ask people by certified mail or email to stop doing what they're doing.
I understand, and I think, Mr. Chair, that maybe Miles was gonna respond to that.
Miles, go ahead.
I think this is also, and I'm sorry to also loop in Lindsay, but to see, so we say be in writing, or be sent by certified mail or email. So would be in writing, would that encapsulate the comments about direct messaging that person?
I think that's a question for Lindsay, Ken.
Yes,
Mr.
yes,
Chair.
that is a question for Lindsay.
Yeah, the writing is separate right now from the sent by certified mail or email. So I think on that by certified mail or email would have to be by certified mail, email, or through electronic communication via the medium on which the personal information was shared, something like that. To try and capture whatever kind of communication service is available through that kind of website.
Would that be okay with Miles and with Delegate Bartlett?
Friendly amendment. Yep, I see it as a friendly amendment.
Okay, great.
So can I move the amendments that were offered by the sponsor with the friendly amendment?
Thanks. Do we have a second?
Concept.
We have a second from Delegate Lynn.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second on the amendments. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, anyone opposed? Seeing no opposition, does anyone have a motion on the bill as amended? Thank you, Delegate Johnson.
Second.
Okay, and Delegate Tavares seconds. All in favor of the bill as amended, say aye.
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 Any opposition? Delegate Austin. Okay, thank you. Delegate Bartlett, thank you. Sorry to hold you up.
Thank you, committee. I appreciate it. Subcommittee, I appreciate it. No problem.
Let's go on. Is Delegate Whiteholland still here? Yeah, let's go on to 1092.
This bill requires the Maryland 911 Board to establish training standards for public safety answering point personnel based on national best practices for high quality telecommunications cardiopulmonary resuscitation. The bill also expands the stated purpose of the 911 Trust Fund to include providing funding for any such training. The amendment submitted by the sponsor removed the training standards requirements, and it authorizes the 911 Trust Fund to be used to fund telecommunications CPR. The cross-file on this bill passed the Senate 47-0 with the same amendments.
Thanks, Delegate Austin. I'm sorry, Delegate Whiteholland.
No, Lindsay did an excellent job. And again, this is in the same posture as the Senate. So I urge a favorable report.
Move the bill.
Okay.
Second.
Let me go to Delegate Shalega.
Just remind me what the fiscal note is, if any.
There is no fiscal note. Again, this bill, I'm sorry.
Oh, you're breaking up, Jen.
There's no fiscal note.
No.
Okay.
All right, we do have a motion and a second on the amendments. All in favor of the amendments, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed to the amendments? Seeing no opposition, do I have a motion on the bill as amended?
Move the bill.
Second.
We have a motion to second on the bill as amended. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposition to the bill as amended? Okay, seeing none, the bill moves on to full committee. Let's take Delegate Hill's second bill, 1174.
This bill establishes the Technology Advisory Commission to study and make recommendations on specified artificial intelligence issue. The commission must be staffed by the Center for Equitable Artificial Intelligence and Machine Learning Systems at Morgan State University. By December 31st each year, the commission must submit a report of its activities and recommendations to the Governor and General Assembly. The sponsor submitted amendments that add 2 members to the commission, 1 representative of the Center for Applied AI at UMBC and 1 representative of the Maryland Insurance Administration, and specifies that the representative of the Center for Applied AI at UMBC shall serve as the vice chair of the commission. Strikes language from the bill mandating a $100,000 appropriation to the commission. And that's it.
Okay, Delegate Hill.
Move the amendments.
Second.
Okay, motion on the amendments in a second. All in favor of the amendments, say aye. Any opposition to the amendments? Seeing none, is there a motion on the bill as amended?
Second.
Okay, Delegate Shalega.
Same question. I hear you say you took away
It's
the
denoted
100.
0 because Morgan has said that they can absorb the cost for the first year, and they come back every year for an appropriation. And at that, once the commission is established, it would be part of their ask, their regular budgetary process. It could be absorbed into the regular budgetary process.
Thank you.
Delegate Chisholm.
I was going to ask the same question, but the whole point of AI is to take out political biases. I know that it go whatever. So how do you make an AI system equitable?
So the first thing you do is and let me put it this way, Delegate Chisholm. So I've worked on this for a few years, came up with procurement things and disclosure things, and a bunch of things. And how I came to a commission was because it didn't exactly what you're saying. Who am I to decide how we do this? And so what the commission is saying, there are people who live and breathe in this world every day, and they're experts here in our state. And so instead of we as legislators, or frankly, the administration deciding how do we mitigate against unintended outcomes, why don't we ask the experts what we should be looking at, what are the best practices, and what's coming down the pike? So this commission is exactly to answer your question. How do we mitigate against unintended outcomes and damages? How do we define bias, and how can we know about it in advance? That's what
I can add to that answer, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Delegate Kaiser.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Delegate Chisholm, I was at a cyber, I don't know what it was, a few weeks ago. We're all exhausted. Anyway, I was speaking on a panel, and someone else was talking from a university and talking about bias, and that basically there's ways to like look at the model going in, and then there's ways to like test the model, see what kind of results you're getting, essentially not in the real world, and then see if the results seemingly suggest that bias, and then what you can do to then go back and fix it. It might not be different in some ways from like mathematical or economic modeling that, believe it or not, I did at one point in my life. And you can kind of go back and say, did we get what we expected? And if not, was there something wrong with our original model? So there's ways to retool it. We can never be perfect, clearly, but there are ways to like assess and reduce that bias.
And I'd add another thing. So even without AI and machine, and digital systems, we have inherent bias in all of our algorithms, right? So all our algorithms have bias, and sometimes we know what they are. So if we're talking about hiring someone, and I've got, an all-female panel, and they're saying, I think babysitting is a really good point system, that we should give extra points because babysitters are responsible. There's a bias in that system. And so part of the question is, are the biases that are inherent in the system? And most people who write algorithmic systems have some idea of whether, what they've already programmed in there. But the question is, how do you get after the other pieces?
And
so
this
it's not unique to machine learning and digital systems. All algorithms are written based on biases that the programmer just chooses to put in them.
And this commission is just going to study all of these outcomes.
This commission is going to advise the state and the council that is under the governor on how to best meet the goals of the governor's executive order. And at the same time, how do we do that and still be a welcoming state for advancement in this area in technology and the same for private industry? So what are the guardrails? How do we protect privacy for our citizens, right? How do we make sure that the systems that the state is offering and the software that we're procuring are not going to do harm, right? So how do we get better in this area? These are the experts. They're going to advise us and also tell us where we need to be looking. And
okay. Thank you, Mr.
on
Chair.
an ongoing basis.
Thanks. I believe we have a motion and a second on the bill as amended. Is that correct? Okay.
Correct.
On the bill as amended.
Move the bill as amended.
Second.
All right. All in favor of the bill as amended?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? All right. Thank you. I'm going to push my luck and call 1026.
This bill adds members of the U.S. Space Force to several provisions of state law that refer to members of the U.S. Armed Forces. The bill also expands existing statutory provisions to authorize military spouses and residents of the state who are members of the National Guard of another state or part of a reserve component of the U.S. Armed Forces to terminate or suspend certain consumer-related contracts when called into military service. The sponsor offered amendments that conform the bill to Senate Bill 707, which was voted out of EEE 11-0, authorizing the governor to award commissions, appointments, or promotions posthumously. This is referenced in the bill hearing. They were talking about Harriet Tubman.
Okay, thank you. Motion on the
Move
amendment?
the amendment.
Second?
Second.
On the amendments, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank
Move the
you.
bill.
Move the bill as amended.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. On the bill as amended, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. That bill moves on to full committee. Delegate Taveras, you had to be here tomorrow morning anyway, so we'll take you up. We have 2 minutes to get to full committee. Thank you, everyone. I'll see you in a couple of minutes, and we are adjourned.